There's a lot of money in gender identity. That's why I call it gender, because it is an industry. Do you remember it was a couple of weeks ago, there was some feminist Marxist, at least nominally, who was all up in my grill about calling it an industry. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like, no one calls it an industry. That's stupid. I'm like, oh, really? It's not an industry. Why don't you explain to me how gender hasn't become an industry? Of all the things to come at me from a Marxist to get irritated about a communist symbol in her bio, how is this not an industry? It's like that was the controversial part of that statement. The industry, of course, sustains itself by promoting the narrative that gender identity is central to personal fulfillment and societal progress. It's not the money. That's just a happy coinkydink. All the money and all the jobs and all the careers and all the virtue signaling and all this, that, and whatever. That's just, don't look at that. That's just secondary.
No. Right.
It's really about
the wealth.
Yes. And that's especially where the advocacy and the media comes in. Kamala Harris writing Dylan Mulvaney a letter on his 1 year of girlhood, living authentically.
Oh, God. Seems to be such a headache, that guy.
So there's conflicts of interest because you have the financial and institutional incentives raise questions about whether the promotion of gender ideology and all this stuff that follows from it serves actually these poor people who have these, I don't even know, what should I call it? Unique. Okay, let me think about my words here. So it serves those who have these minority gender identities, or if it serves the industry itself.
Right.
So all the activist organizations advocating now for so-called gender identity rights are receiving significant funding from donors, often channeling these resources into lobbying, legal battles, and public quote-unquote awareness campaigns. Public awareness sounds fantastic, but are you raising my awareness or are you indoctrinating or gaslighting me?
It's not like telling people not to leave their pets in the car in summer, right? Which is, like awareness. That's helpful. But telling impressionable young people who all seem to be on some kinds of meds anyways for their anxiety or depression or ADHD, or telling these kids that, oh, well, you might be feeling sad because you're born in the wrong body, that's total indoctrination.
Yeah, they haven't been able to articulate or to specify their particular gender identity. That's the problem. So many of these organizations partner with corporations for visibility funding and to push so-called diversity initiatives that, of course, include gender identity as a key component. Let's remember that what gender identity means in practice is that we go along as if there are male women and female women and male men and female men. So undermining or blurring what used to be common sense and clearly defined girl, boy, man, woman. So now there's us unintentional, just born this way women. And then there's the male women who have something called a woman gender identity that is not measurable or objectively determined or anything like that. It's basically a claim. And since these unicorns have this claim very insistently, this becomes something that we should, affirm and recognize and incorporate.
Yes, respect.
And I only know this because my awareness has been raised.
Totally.
We cannot protect women and girls from harmful sex discrimination, invasions of their sexual privacy, and sex-based violence against women and girls if sex is judicially redefined to mean an amorphous continuum of subjectively felt genders that may not relate to sex at all. Further, we are clear about our sex. Listen, boys. And listen, everybody. We are female human beings. This recognition is demonstrably more accurate than notions from the framework of so-called gender identity. In fact, not a single one of us has a gender identity at all. Do you have a gender identity, Tanya?
I don't, but sometimes I've toyed with the idea of having something really cool, maverick, renegade gender, hey? Because they actually exist. There's websites and there's 300 and you can pick. And you can change as much as you want. Why do I have to be a boring middle-aged? Why can't I be a renegade gender? How fun is that?
And all the accoutrements, like your birthstone, you can have your gender stone. I love Daniel. He's good for the comedy.
My father actually says this shit. The fact he has absorbed this nonsense just indicates to me that Trumpism is now pure mockery. I think it's over.
Who types to their dad "Happy Election Day" with an exclamation point?
To generate content.
Same to you. May the commies lose. Go Trump. And he tweets later.
My dad sent me a photo of him and his girlfriend both wearing trash bags at a polling place. He wrote, "Trash wins." So yeah, I think culture war identity politics was a catastrophic mistake all around.
Do you, Daniel? You're the dude who will say trans women are women. And if Tut for these guys, Tut would say that these are women, but identity politics all around. Daniel, please take a seat. He's trying to cover his bases now. He sees which way the winds are blowing. Oh, everybody was guilty of identity politics. To quote Zizek at him, he lacks the language to be able to articulate his particular form of unfreedom.
Why is that man wearing a skirt?
Emperor's new skirt.
Was he a United
Well,
States?
one's a trans woman and one's a non-binary. And one's a she, her now. And even though he has a wife and kids, we all know that what makes a woman is putting on a woman outfit.
Even the pantyhose. I mean,
James transphobe, shush. Anyway.
Grandpa dressing like that. Like, what's that?
I have to dig into him because he thinks I'm a fascist transphobe because I'm not a sex denialist. And I don't think it's empowering for there to be male women. I love that I was able to say, did you explain to him that Trump is a father of the horde figure and does tweets that make sex mimics cry? So I wrote back, your dad sounds based. Someone I could have a beer with. I bet he knows there's no such thing as male women. I'm Team Daddy Tut. I'm all King Dad Tut.
Posting your L's.
Hey, man, I'm sure that next Deleuzian reading group you have will really build bridges. Maybe RFK is right. Maybe there's been like a concerted effort to reduce the testosterone.
There must be.
And Alex
Have
Jones.
you been tested here? What's your T level?
Toxic.
What's your masculinity level? Is it toxic, Anthony, or is it just right?
I think it's fully toxic from how I'm being perceived by people.
I love Daniel. He's good for the comedy, but not intentionally.
I was just thinking maybe science would have something to say about having your genitals rearranged surgically.
Because it's reducing distress. Yeah. If you're dysphoric, which means unhappy about your female body, if you're a woman, or your male body, if you're a man, you have a bad feeling. And so what they're doing is reducing that bad feeling. Ergo, it must be somehow good, scientific, etc. Yeah.
You know what? I have a friend who's a wound care nurse of like 30 years. She's a total pro. She's nice to the gender people, but she was telling me that she sees a lot of young women who've had the surgery who come in peeing like out of 4 places because of their rupture.
Of course.
So I guess feeling sad is worse than peeing out of 4 places.
Mm-hmm. And we
feel
know
sad.
a common problem for the guys. So guys, tuck, don't cut. Because a lot of the guys who go through the bottom surgery complain of anal leakage. So apparently the lining, I don't know, between the perineum and where the poop comes out of, there's seepage. So your fake vagina smells like poop.
Right.
Poop has never come out of my vagina.
God. Can you imagine? The boys
3
who've
babies
had,
have, but
who've had the puberty blockers, so they have micro penises, so their penises never grow to adult length. So they don't have enough tissue to make a Frankenvag, so they have to use part of the colon, and that also smells bad. At least they're not feeling sad at night, right?
Yeah,
At least they're not dysphoric.
it's a different. You're not worried about that anymore. You're worried about infections and
Thank
weird
you, science.
smells and having to dilate. Anyway, but fortunately, most men who claim that they're women don't go in for the full package, the full gender kit. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Morbid Symptoms podcast, a special edition of the Sex Gender ID War Update. And I'm very happy that we have a special guest with us tonight, Eddie Liger. I think his name is Liger. He'll tell us. And he's going to be coming up here any moment. Let's see if his sound is also good. Hey, Eddie, can you hear us? Can you hear us? I can see you, Eddie, and I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh.
Nope. Let's see. Can you hear me, Tanya?
Yes, I can hear you. And
Okay. Let's see if Eddie comes up again. Let's see.
Eddie Liger.
First things first.
Eddie Liger. Eddie.
Eddie
Sounds like a
Liger.
hockey player.
Eddie Smith.
Eddie Liger.
We'll ask him. We'll ask him what his. So I'm going to put him back down. Anyway, so hello. This is a Morbid Symptoms podcast, the Sex Gender ID War Update, and we have an interview, a special guest, Eddie Liger, who's coming out of the gender closet, so to speak. He's going to tell us his free thoughts on what he thinks about gender ideology, and at least I'm assuming, and industry and leftists and Marxists and all this stuff. Let's see if he can hear us now. Hey, Eddie.
Hey, how's it going? Sorry, I had to move location.
Hey, there we go. I can see you and I can hear you.
Sweet.
Cool. Can you hear him, Tanya?
I sure can. Hi, Eddie. Looks like we're wearing the
my
same
God, I
glasses.
think everything's working. I think everything's working. It's a StreamYard miracle. Anyway, welcome. Hey, Eddie, how you doing?
Good. I'm really excited for this. This is a topic I've been wanting to, or a can of worms, I guess I've been wanting to open for a long time. So I'm glad that you guys are giving me the opportunity to do it here.
Fun.
Well, I'm glad you offered. I feel almost like an Oprah or something, like I'm getting some sort of exclusive.
I wish. Could you imagine?
Yeah, really. It's like, so tell me, Eddie, what is a woman?
What is a woman?
First things first. Yeah. Or we should be like, what is a man? Yeah. Anyway, so all joking aside, I'm very happy that you reached out because us, well, TERFs is a name that we kind of, it was applied to us and we kind of recuperated, have noticed that there's very few public voices from Marxists in general, but we've noticed the male Marxists in particular. And so since they're technically supposed to be materialists and other things, we found it noteworthy. So there's a few of you who I call unicorns. So Alexander McKay from the Marx Engels and Institute, and also Garrett Ramirez, a social populist who's been on our show a couple of times, and also a few others who will say it publicly, not just in whispers. And while we realize, of course, that it's not an easy thing to talk about, that people can get canceled and pronoun mobbed and all kinds of things, we do appreciate it. So anyway, I can introduce you, or do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, you can introduce me, I guess. I'm not good at bragging, so.
Well, I don't know if I was going to brag any.
Or I'm not good at shitting on myself either.
This is what I know about. I feel like I know you though, because I played a very bit part in the whole Danny Shaw thing. So I feel like
that's right. He said he talked.
You know, I want a bit part in the Bad Lebowski. If the Coen brothers ever kind of do a remake of that, I do want a little bit of a bit part, but I don't want to be the weird lady. Say that. I prefer the mother of the horde. It's more badass. Anyway, so is it Liger? Is that how you say your name?
Yeah. It's a screen name.
Okay, so Eddie Liger. This is what I know about you, Eddie. This is your life. He is a member, maybe a founding member of Midwestern Marx, and he's also on, I want to say, the executive board of the American Communist Party, which is not yet a year old, although it seems like it's been a wild ride. And yeah, Marxist-Leninist, I think, is how you would identify in terms of the Marxist pantheon. And I have noticed that you guys I haven't been, following you with a fine tooth comb, but I have noticed that at least my impression, you try to stay out of this topic, not really get into it too much because you're more class focused and whatnot. But of course, it's one of those things that, it's kind of like the elephant in the room. And so, Eddie reached out. We've been DMing it off and on, and said he would like to come on or have me come on his show. So because he was ready to talk more openly about his, personal opinions on this, but also I'm assuming his Marxist analysis of it as well. So Eddie, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate your guys' show here. I watch it quite often. I think it was
really.
Yeah, especially once you started having Alex McKay on, because it's
a
topic
so
that,
not for us then.
Well, it was for the topic that you were giving Alex a platform to speak on. It was and I like the name of the show, Morbid Symptoms, too, because I think it's perfect. Like, there are some idealist tendencies on the left that have become entrenched dogmas that we're not allowed to challenge, that lead to all sorts of other idealism and mistakes in our strategy. So I think it's a great show.
Yeah. Great name.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was trying to, because when I just finally decided to do, I don't want to make this about me, but since you brought it up, Eddie, when I was trying to think, okay, when I finally decided to try to do a podcast thing, I thought, well, I can't have it be my name. Nobody knows that. And so I was trying to think of a title. And I'm glad that it resonates, because I was a bit worried that it might be a bit too niche, or that people might not realize it's a cultural and political thing, but it seems like it's worked out all right. Anyway, so Eddie, let's get into it. Let's talk about your gender journey. What's changed? Why do you want to talk about this out in the open now?
Well, because I'm in the process of becoming a woman. So I wanted to come out of the closet.
Please.
Transitioning.
Yes. No, I mean,
You're in the wrong body.
I went to a liberal arts college, so I would say I have a good idea of how this issue is framed and how they get, smart Marxist people who are supposed to be materialists on board with this issue, because it's pitched as a left-wing virtue. You have to accept gender ideology full stop, otherwise you are intolerant, you're a bigot, and if you even come out and criticize it, now you're going to be put on the same level as like a racist. They say this is the same as being a racist or a sexist or whatever else. So it's become a hard issue to criticize, and that's how I think some of the ideological uniformity is enforced. But at first I was like, whatever, let people do whatever they want. We live in a country where, we have a lot of freedom of expression and things like that. Well, as long as you don't criticize the system too hard. But, it was like,
as long as you don't call a man, you're all right.
Right.
or Zionism, or if you have an issue with Zionism, then it seems to be okay.
Exactly. But, I'm generally like a tolerant person. I'd say like I'm left wing on a lot of these social issues myself. Well, like you said, we try and avoid a lot of the culture war pitfalls that have been set up to distract from class. But as this issue evolved and sort of moved out of like Tumblr and only online spaces into the mainstream, and I started seeing things like Leah Thomas competing at the NCAAs and the women's division, it was like, oh wow, this is really becoming a mainstream thing. And a lot of these, a lot of times, like when I was in college, people would say that's never going to happen. You can support trans people and not think that biological men should be allowed to compete in women's sports. And very quickly it turned into, no, now you have to accept biological men competing against girls. So I when I saw that, I started to question it, and I started to say, maybe this isn't just a culture war distraction. I think it gets used that way a lot. But there's also a class element here where a lot of this ideology is being pushed out of NGOs and think tanks funded by pharmaceutical and healthcare companies who make, upwards of $100,000 per transition surgery. And it's being enforced through the education system and the other elements of what we as Marxists recognize as the superstructure of capitalism, the media, the education system, things like that. it's sort of being pushed
Mhm.
on working class families. And this really came to a head for me this year at the Iowa Youth State Wrestling Tournament, because I coach boys and girls. And there was a big controversy this year where a biological male was allowed to compete in the girls division. And once I saw this, and here is a picture from that event where a lot of people were standing up. This went fairly viral within the Iowa wrestling community, which is a small community, but pretty much everyone was on board with saying that this is not okay and we need to protect girls' sports. And I had avoided the controversy for a while. I don't, I love people. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm attacking them as an individual. But once I saw this, I'll run through a wall for any of my athletes. I'll do anything for the girls that I coach. And it sort of, impressed upon me, okay, I have to say something about this. I have to vouch for the female athletes that I work with on a day-to-day basis, because now this is infringing upon their day-to-day life. And what these girls spend hours and hours and hours training and dedicating themselves for this sport, and now they're trying to throw biological men into the girls' brackets. It's like, I can't just sit idly by and act like this is something that's okay.
All right, so this is a recent we call it peak in the in the turf world, that because a lot of us went through a kind of a somewhat similar thing, that you start off with, well, live and let live, whatever, because some of us will have an idea of a transsexual, whatever, and then you see pronouns, people wanting to put pronouns in their bio, and you think, oh, this is interesting. And then you hear about kids being taught about, different gender identities, and that there's a separation between biology and gender. You're like, huh. And then you start hearing more and more things, and it went from being, like a way of them explaining how they feel, like a metaphor, like I feel like I should, I want to be the different sex, or I feel like I should be a different sex, to actually, no, I am. There's actually two types of women and two types of men, and regular accidental women have no more claim on woman than the so-called trans women, who are guys who make a claim. And a lot of us were kind of, this had gone so far by the time we started to realize there was an issue. And then there was this kind of like, it was closed. There's like no debate, and people were monstered. People who even made in the, just small things like, well, okay, yeah, there's trans women, but trans women and women are two different things. Like Kathleen Stock in the UK and other people literally had to leave their professor positions because they were being hounded by students who were emboldened by faculty members. And you're like, what? And you see your people getting kicked out. I heard of when I first thought, okay, I need to look into this. There's something else going on. As I heard about two women getting kicked out of Labour Women UK, because they wouldn't go along with trans women or women. I thought, this is crazy. So I spent a couple of days looking into it. And the more I looked into it, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is crazy. It's just crazy. Anyway, Tanya, do you want to say anything to what Eddie said?
Eddie, you coach girls in wrestling, is that right?
Yes, girls and boys. Yep.
Do they wrestle together?
Sometimes you'll put like an older girl with a younger boy, but then like the older they get, the more that puberty starts to take hold and separate them, which is why it was such a big fight in the wrestling community to get girls wrestling to even be a thing, which now feels like it's sort of backsliding. Yeah.
And there must be some kind of wrestling body in the States that regulates that. What's their policy? Self-ID?
So yes, that's USA Wrestling is the name, and they hadn't really taken a position on this for a while, and then there was a big controversy, like I said, with the Youth State Wrestling Tournament this year, where USA Wrestling was going back and forth. They didn't know if they were going to allow the athlete to compete or not. And the mom of the trans athlete petitioned very hard for their kid to be allowed to compete, and USA Wrestling ended up caving and saying yes, and all the girls withdrew from that bracket and didn't get to wrestle because they refused to wrestle a biological male. So that's kind of where it's at.
They didn't want to wrestle a boy. And he didn't just put the girls at risk of harm, right? He also took the place of a girl that might have been wrestling in that spot. And girls want
Mhm.
to have their spots, and they want to try to win. Like, it's not just
Mhm.
oh, we just want to play, we just want to be there, right? So, and someone's saying that the hormone levels of trans women, which are men, are the same as women. They're not. And even if they were,
No, they're
even
totally
boys,
not. That's totally false.
even before boys
And
go
also,
into
I would say, also I want to say is that women are not a hormone level, and men aren't a
no,
hormone level. We're a
no,
complete
no, no,
system.
no, no, no.
But I wanted to
And
ask you also, Eddie, because and please don't take this as if we sound aggressive, we're not intending to, because we're just further along in this than maybe you are, yeah. But it's also the thing that, and I have two girls, I have three kids, but I have two girls, and they play on a football, so soccer, and they play other schools once a month, and there's two schools that have quote unquote non-binary, which like boys on the girls' team. And most of the girls don't like it. They don't like having to pretend that this boy is a girl. And he's faster and all this type of stuff. So it's not just, so there's the safety thing and the fairness, but the psychological aspect of
Yeah.
pretending all of this as if that's
having
nice.
to be in a locker room with the opposite,
Yeah.
having to change
course.
together and
Yeah.
stuff.
No, of course.
And
Yeah. So,
the argument,
and also I noticed, I just wanted to ask you, Eddie, you said biological male. What other kind is there?
I guess.
And I'm only asking that because the language, we don't even realize how the discourse has, how it's become, just, you're not even thinking about it. But yeah, because it implies every time we say that, you're not the only one. I also do it because I'm trying to make a distinction if I'm talking to gender people, genderists, but it implies that there's more than one type of man, biological and something else, or there's another type of woman other than biological. So, but yeah,
there's a
so,
whole
but
bunch of
how
stuff we
are
don't say.
things going? Yeah, how are things going? So what's it seems like the parents are fairly organized to where you're at. So what do you think is going to happen with this?
Yeah, I have a feeling there's going to continue to be a lot of pushback. The wrestling community is not going to accept it, period. I don't know any single person, even the most liberal people in the community are looking at this, and they're against it because it's common sense. And you can be against all this gender ideology stuff, but it's only once it comes to your doorstep and starts to affect your life and your kids, I think that people really begin to take action. And that's what's happening now. It's sort of like I said, there's a class distinction here where you have all these working class families, and this sport that's always been a sport for the working class. Wrestling is extremely inexpensive to do compared to other sports. It's always been a working class sport, and now this liberal gender ideology is being enforced from the top down. And the argument that's always made, because I like this point that you made about women and men being a whole system, being more than just hormones. That's absolutely correct, because if you hear like Veronica Ivy and these other advocates for transgenders in sport, what they'll say is, well, or Emma Vigeland, they'll say, well, there are all sorts of genetic advantages in sports. You can be taller, you can be wide, or you can be stronger. And it's like, yes, those are the advantages that males tend to have over women. So you can't just say, well, male, female is just another distinction, as in taller versus shorter, because males tend to be taller, males tend to be stronger, males have more bone density. It's and I mean, this is just common sense.
They can punch harder.
What? Yeah.
Well, and this is the weird thing, how because I know that you read into the MK Ultra stuff, and I bring this up because it was amazing to me, and that's why the word genderborg I like, because it seems like everybody just forgot, like they just they can't figure out, like, why do we have girls' rooms and boys' rooms? Why do we have these different spaces for, like all of a sudden, if we have time, I'll tell you about my interaction with Katie Halper. That was crazy. But anyway,
I like Katie.
just kind
Are
of
you gonna ruin her for me?
So do I. But she, she's really passionate about trans women being in women's prisons. So her and I part ways on that. But anyway,
I don't agree.
Yeah. And so it's just like this, all of a sudden people are pretending like they don't know where they came from, that they don't know what a woman and a man are. There aren't these differences that when they matter, really matter. And to pretend that women are a dickless man or a hormone level or a feeling in a guy's head or, anything subjective is just, it's fine if you're just doing your thing. But when it comes to them wanting to be, like you said, play on women's sports or use women's private facilities or make everybody pretend that they're a woman, it's like, sex fraud or something. Then it becomes like, this isn't liberty. This is authoritarian. It's progressive authoritarianism, Go ahead, Tanya.
I see another comment. I'm just reading the comments. Sorry, it's not that I don't want to listen to you. Eddie, this guy says, he says males also have those advantages over men. It's moving. This just seems like an excuse to discriminate. Do you have like 2 seconds to explain why you have weight classes? I assume you have weight classes in wrestling. Why you have weight classes in wrestling?
Many weight classes, because if you're bigger, it is a massive advantage. That's why wrestling is such a great sport for people of all different, genetic makeups, because you don't have, it's not like football where if you're not 250 to 300 pounds, you can't play on the line. In wrestling, if you're 125 pounds, there's a weight class for you. You can wrestle against other people of your size. And that allows for, there are genetic differences between the men in those weight classes. And that's the beauty of wrestling, is learning to use your own physical gifts and combat your own physical weaknesses in order to compete. And then when you enter, a man in a woman's bracket who has all of these biological advantages, you kind of erase the beauty of the process of training and the hard work that it takes to achieve, because there's no way for those female swimmers to train hard enough to beat Leah Thomas, because men are just much faster than women in swimming in general, and we've known this for years and years. And now you have like powerlifting records being broken in women's sports by men. And it's like, and this is what like people like Hassan Piker promised us would never happen. They still act like, what do you mean it's not being pushed on kids? There's not anything, the trans ideology, the gender ideology isn't being forced on you. It's just adults doing what they want to do. Why do you care? It's weird to care. It's like, no, go to any high school in the country. You have kids who are alienated and depressed and have crazy ass home lives, and everywhere they go is, a sticker for gender ideology, or a teacher who's going to tell them, here's the solution to all your problems, change your gender, when
they get attention and love bombed.
Yeah,
of course.
And people do what they want.
Well, right? and what I would say to these people is that, go ahead. Sorry, Tanya.
No, go ahead. I'm done. Just that these kids get what they want, right?
I was just going to say that the people who want to parse and try to shoehorn why men who claim who want to pretend they're women for whatever reason, I don't care what the reason is, not my problem, that's their problem, is that women get their own sports. We get our own bathrooms, and woman belongs to females, not to men. Yeah. So if, and again, if you want, if you whatever, personal, individual rights, freedom of expression, all of that stuff. But I also have mine and the boundaries. And I'm sorry, but it's just ridiculous that people would expect girls or women to go along and be the supporting cast to bolster some guy's fantasy. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
And I didn't, it took me a while to get here, Eddie. I used to not be so, I used to not be so mean, but it's just crazy.
Mean. You've always been mean.
They
could have, they could have,
it's just, we have to speak the truth. There are two sexes, that is it. Gender identity is a brand, it's a fiction, it's like goth or something, and people can really believe in it and really, really go whole hog and have things cut off and put on. Still doesn't change the fact that you are whatever you were at the moment of fertilization.
That's right.
Anyway.
And I think that
that was not for you, Eddie. That was for the people in the comments.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's Eddie. That's not Eddie saying this. It's me.
Right. So they should have, okay, men who want to compete in lipstick or like in a padded bra should be allowed to compete with the other men, right? Like they don't need to compete in the women's categories. And then invariably, whenever it's like, okay, well, let's make an open category for trans, they don't want to do it. Why do you think that is? Why do they insist on competing as women and not say, I demand to be allowed to wear lipstick and compete? Like I want to wrestle with the men.
I think that, I mean, I'm sure the argument they would make is that, you know, I am a woman, so, you know, society needs to validate, you know, that for me. But I think
Oh, Eddie's gone. Deep state.
Shite. Remember
Well,
Laurel
he'll
Hubbard?
be back.
Laurel Hubbard
Oh,
was
yeah.
the guy from
Sorry,
New
my
Zealand.
co-director Carlos
Oh,
was
no,
calling
it's-
me, even though he knows I'm on this podcast and he's probably watching. Carlos,
It's all
stop
right.
calling
No,
me.
it's okay. It's okay.
Sorry, I need
Yeah.
my computer.
So
back,
the thing was
but
that when people try to set up separate trans categories, the men who want to compete as women aren't interested in that.
right, and I think, like I said, it goes along with the whole thing of wanting your identity to be validated by society. But I think on another level, because in preparation for
I think
this
it's a power
podcast-
trip, but yeah.
Right, and in preparation for this podcast, I've been researching a lot of the trans athletes, and a lot of them were struggling to find success in the men's division. And this is something in sports like that's very, very common. Like if you're a AAA baseball player, right, you're very, very good, but you're one step away from making the MLB and making millions of dollars. That's when they inject themselves with steroids. You know, I'm a Greco-Roman wrestler. I did well. I've placed at the US Open and stuff, but I've never been able to break through to the top 3 where I start making money. And I feel that temptation to take steroids, to inject myself with testosterone. And I think people like Veronica Ivy, you know, struggle to find that success in their sport. And they're like, well, I can transition now. I mean, I know the best girl in the world, Olympic champion at my weight. Some of my buddies have wrestled her before. I know I could beat her very easily. So it's like, if you are, you know, sort of an isolated, socially isolated and selfish and depraved person, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, I think that incentive really is there to say, you know, I'm going to join women's sports. I'm going to transition to and compete against women so I can dominate, which is, as an athlete, is so shameful to me. But
well, also, since this may be changing, but you also get like, oh, they're so stunning and brave, and she's being her true self, and isn't it great? And we're just supposed to pretend that they're not towering over the other bikers on the winnings, on the champion stand or something. I mean, it's just, yeah, you know. But yeah, so I would say that there are there's a lot of misinformation out there. But Emma fond of Beatles, and I'll put this in the video description later. We know quite a few people who are developmental biologists, but focus on sports, who've been trying to counteract this crazy disinformation for 10 years now. And I'll put that so people can check it out for themselves. You don't have to take my word for it. I'm not a sports development biologist or whatever, but I know what a woman and a man are, and a boy and a girl are.
Yeah, you're a genius.
I mean, I wrestled. One of my training partners growing up was a girl, and I was always able to beat her. But then as we got older, things really separated. You know, as we started like hitting puberty and stuff, and eventually there was no girls wrestling at the time. She quit the sport because she was like dealing with like having to cut weight and stuff on her period, stuff that guys don't have to deal with. She was dealing with like some creepy guys like feeling her up when she was wrestling, dealing with all these things. And she's like, fuck it, I'm just going to be a wrestling manager. I'm not going to keep doing this. So it's like, if you're little kids, yeah, you know, you can have boys compete with girls. The boys are still going to have an advantage. They still shouldn't be actually competing against each other unless you have a girl who's super advanced and wants to test herself. But as you get older, there is no denying that there's an advantage for boys. I mean, and the fact that people are,
and everyone knew this till about 5 years ago, Eddie. That's the crazy thing. Everybody knew this till a couple of years ago.
Right. That's why we fought so hard for women's wrestling to be a thing. That's why it took off, because girls they want to wrestle other girls. They don't want to wrestle boys.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
Even if
Yeah.
even a boy or a man who goes into the category and does totally crap is still taking a spot from a woman, right? It's still where he doesn't belong.
Yeah, that's like that
Yeah,
episode
it's
of
just
South Park where Cartman enters the Special Olympics and still loses.
yeah.
There's a lot
That's
of
right.
those too.
Well,
That's right.
and also it's this weird entitlement. And I don't know this idea that because there's trade-offs, yeah. So if you decide that you want to get, if you're a guy and you decide you want to do this full gender kit and you want to suppress your testosterone and go on estrogen and get fake tits or whatever it is you want to do, okay, fine, but there's going to be some drawbacks. Yeah. You don't get to play on the, if you want to play professional sports, whatever, you don't get to do that on the girls or women's team. You either have to not do it or take it up with your brothers. You know, like, hey, you know, this is just, you know, like I remember The World According to Garp. You know, I mean, that's an old movie. I'm older than you, but he wasn't getting dressed in the girls' locker room. I mean, you know, that's kind of funny, but it's just like it's, you know, this whole thing about people say, well, where are they? They'll show you pictures. I'm sure you've seen this, Eddie. They'll show you pictures like very photoshopped, perfect lighting pictures. Like, oh, you think, you know, this person should go in the men's room? I think that men should go in the men's room and women should go in the women's room. Yeah, and if you don't want that, then you can go to a single stall. You know, there's lots of people who don't like going to public restrooms. They know where the single stalls are to go to that. But this idea that you make all these decisions and these radical changes, decide to really feminize or masculinize yourself, and we're all supposed to just, you know, pretend like sex doesn't matter is crazy.
Yeah,
and if
I
you say
agree.
anything, then you're the bad guy. You're like, oh, what's wrong
Right.
with you? Why can't you be nice? It's like, why can't you sort out your gender cray? Like nudists can't be nude all the time, and you can't do your gender stuff all the time. Too
Good
bad.
analogy.
Eddie, did you find
Go
that
ahead,
your
Todd.
federation were they okay with you defending biological reality, or did they want to punish you somehow?
If I was still coaching at a university, they might be, but I run my own private club now, so I'm kind of my own boss. And USA Wrestling has already faced massive backlash for this decision. So I don't think there's not much that they could do to me anyways. But funny story, back when I was coaching at a university, one of the administrators there was a professional downhill mountain biker. And she was, you know, there were people like trying to get me fired for my politics, emailing the university and things just for the Marxism and the communism and stuff, really disgusting stuff. But she was like telling me, you know, you have to be careful what you post. And she said, by example, I'm in mountain biking and there is a transgender individual who keeps winning every mountain biking race. And we know that they're not even taking the specified hormones as laid out, you know, in the IOC guidelines. They were just basically, you know, not taking estrogen and just dominating all of the women. She's like, but I can't say anything about that because I'll lose my job, which goes to how this is institutionally enforced. And I'm like, I get that, but at the same time, holy cow, you don't want to speak out when your sport is being dominated by, you know, not women in a women's sport.
Yeah. No, and it's really sad how many organizations, whether it be universities or federations, have not stood up and said no. You know, because that really with the, you know, even though we're not on the same side with Riley Gaines' politics, I mean, she really was like, this is bullshit, you know, and made a difference and had to fight. And the volleyball thing now, they're having to fight the NAACP with volleyball. Because the women, the girls and young women in the university are like, we don't want to play against this dude. You know, they can spike the ball harder and it's not fair. And people just want it to go away. They want to tell people, oh, just be nice, you know, just be nice. And it's like, well, like you said, it's like people are going to practice all this time and then have to suck it up for this. Like this guy's going to go anywhere.
These athletes dedicate their entire lives to these sports. Those women who Leah Thomas jumped in the pool and beat had been training their entire lives for that moment. And I know I was an NCAA All-American, and winning that award was, to this day, one of the greatest and most gratifying moments of my life because it was all this work I had put in since the age of 5. Like, imagine if they would have put somebody who's taking steroids in my bracket, you know, who no amount of hard work could get me to that level. It would be infuriating for me.
Right. So, Eddie, what do you think? You know what? all the years I've been turfing, we've always had this conversation. Well, those girls just shouldn't compete. Those women should just refuse to compete if there's going to be a guy in their category. Some of us say, yeah, they should just refuse. They should all walk out because that's really effective. Others say, well, that's quite
They
an
could risk
ask,
their scholarship, yeah.
right? That's
Sorry.
quite an ask. What do you think? Like, what do you think of that argument? Like, should we all just be saying, nope, not doing it, strike, not doing it, or how do we work that?
I'm gonna have to see how this plays out in Iowa and how USA Wrestling responds. Because, like I said, every girl who was in I believe it was the 120, 125 pound bracket at state refused to wrestle. And then a bunch of girls said that they'll actually, and their parents said they'll actually be boycotting any USA Wrestling event. So I hope that USA Wrestling responds to that by, laying down some common sense guidelines here. But if they don't, that's a really hard situation. Like if one of my girls is going to be wrestling in that bracket, they've trained for this, they've prepared for this, it's hard to tell them don't wrestle, but it's also hard to tell them, oh yeah, just deal with it and go wrestle somebody who has double the testosterone that you do. So I think the boycotts can be helpful, but the institutions got to get it together. There has to be some way to force their hand. I think a boycott may be one way, but at the same time, I totally understand why athletes would be like, screw it, I'm just gonna do my best, and if I have to wrestle them, I have to wrestle them.
Well, we'll have to, I don't want to, I can't think of it now, but I know there's some associations that are working on this. I know like with swimming, but also volleyball, and there's some also women's sports and whatnot. So we'll let you know, because if you're doing something local in Iowa, it'd be good to hook up and see what other people have done that's effective, and also to get more awareness to it, because I would definitely support that. It's just going to take, I think, unfortunately, even though Trump's executive orders are at the federal level, it's not only federal institutions that are affected. So unfortunately, it's going to take, coaches and athletes and parents to be like, yeah, no, sorry, no. But I wanted to ask you, because again, I forgot, because the MK Ultra stuff, and I know that I've seen you've kind of gone into a couple of the CIA things. And have you ever thought about it? Because I know that you were kind of didn't want to get into this. It's a hornet's nest. And then once you were directly confronted with it, you felt like, okay, I need to say something now. And I get that. But have you thought about, or have a chance to think about how did this happen, that every single institution within like a few years, it seemed, totally bought into this? There's gender identity and it has to be respected. And there's two types of men and there's two types of women. There's also people who are neither or both, and all this stuff. And misgendering is terrible, and dead naming is terrible. And there's healthcare if you want to block somebody's puberty. Like this, all this became so normalized and so added on to the LGBT, almost like over a decade, maybe? I don't know. The first time I heard about this was maybe even 10 years ago. So have you thought about it all, about just how, like, not to use the word conspiracy, but there seems like there was a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, no, I don't think
so I don't know if you thought about that at all.
I've got a book over there called The Cultural Cold War by Francis Stone Saunders. It's a very good book. And it talks about, COINTELPRO, MK Ultra, Operation Chaos. Another good book is Chaos by Tom O'Neill. That kind of talks about how far the CIA has gone to infiltrate and destroy the left. And a huge part of their strategy has been pushing a focus on identity politics and, issues of sexual freedom and gender freedom, all as a distraction from class politics, anti-imperialist and working class based politics. And what I believe we're seeing now is the logical conclusions of that, and the logical conclusions of liberalism itself, which I always say is, 100% pure freedom of expression for the individual, but no collective freedom. You don't have, the freedom to take time off work and spend it with your family. You don't have the freedom to not live paycheck to paycheck. You don't have the freedom to be connected with your community and unalienated, but you have the freedom to get gender reassignment surgery and, call yourself whatever pronouns you want. It's, taking freedom for the individual to its ultimate conclusion while doing nothing to create freedom for the collective, and it's
Mhm.
it's perfect for the CIA, because I mean, like we said, there are a couple of members of the ACP who are trans, and they do good work, and I have nothing against any individual people. If they want to work to fight imperialism and fight for the working class, go for it. But just based on the things that we've said in this conversation today, if I was in DSA or PSL, I would be kicked out. You are
Of
not
course.
allowed to take this position on the American
Mhm.
left, which is 100% the result of CIA infiltration and the pushing of these kind of issues into the American left. And the American left will never, ever, ever be successful in reaching workers so long as this is part of the checklist. So long as you say, you're only allowed to fight against imperialism and fight for the working class if you want males to be competing in women's sports. No working class people who I know in my entire state are going to agree with that, outside of maybe a few who go to the local liberal arts college. So it's a barrier to the left reaching the working class, because there's no tolerance for other people's views on this issue. It's this rigidly enforced thing that's rooted in idealism. So it prevents the left from being.
Well, I mean, idea that it's an opinion, that whether men can be women is an opinion rather than a,
Right.
And I wanted to add to that is that, in terms of what you said, is that if you can get most people to go along with the fact that men can be women and women can be men, and that a 4-year-old can assert a gender identity, and you can take your kid down and get a different model. If you can get people to go along with all of that, what can't you get people to go along with?
Exactly.
I mean, like, oh, there's, it's like, well, of course, yeah, if the person is a trans woman, he should be in the women's prison. Of course, he should be in the crisis center. Of course, it's just like, what?
Right.
And people are, I just find it really odd. And the whole these mantras, these thought killing cliches, trans rights or human rights. No, sex mimicry and sex fraud is not a human right. Good luck. No. And especially because it requires the recognition. Yeah. They're not just going on doing their thing. And not everybody who's trans, who says they're transsexual or trans does this, but the TRAs, trans rights activists, etc., is that, if you're demanding that I go against what I know to be true and my own freedom of conscience, and that, then that's well beyond individual rights and expression. That's something else. And they don't want to deal with that, or they haven't had to for a long time, because it just became so it was just like, no, this is it. It's just like LGB. And if you have any issue with trans, it's like being against gay rights. And you're like, what does same-sex orientation have to do with wanting to be recognized as the opposite sex? Those are two very different things. But
I think it can actually be.
We're the crazy ones, Eddie. We're the crazy ones.
I think it's actually like the real pushing of gender ideology can actually be homophobic, because if you have kids who tend to be more feminine or whatever, you're telling them, because you fit in with the stereotypes of the opposite sex, you actually are the opposite sex on the inside, and you need to change your body surgically to become the opposite sex. Like, no, a male can just be an effeminate male. Why does there need to be surgical intervention? That's how I feel.
Yeah, it's gay eugenics.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, go ahead, Tanya.
Oh, you know what?
Or was that it?
That was, I said it was gay eugenics, but I was going to mention when you were talking about
my nighttime, it's your morning, and it's Eddie's late afternoon. So we're all like, our biological clocks are at different times.
Speaking of MK Ultra, the Tavistock Clinic. Sorry, the Tavistock Clinic in the UK is where they did all the gender counseling for children, right? And that has something to do with MK Ultra too. Now that you mentioned MK Ultra, but actually, speaking of class issue, Tara, you know what? I'll just wait and let Tara get on with it, because she's got a plan. Go for it.
I do have a plan. I had a plan. So let's go on. So that, I could go on, because this stuff, the sports thing, could go on and on. But let's go and shift now to what we've already kind of you already hit upon, and it's the next thing is that, and these are my words, people, don't get mad at Eddie. Eddie's very nice. Is that why was the left so easily and completely what I would call trans? So the left was easily trans or gender board. Why? Any idea why? What do you think that was about? Was it how there was little resistance or any kind of like, hey, asterisks?
Yeah, liberals are very good at weaponizing people's empathy and trying to virtue signal and make you feel like a bad person for not accepting their position. So for years, and this is also a product of the fact that they struggle to actually make a substantive argument for gender ideology. So they become experts at shutting people up and making them feel like shit and making them feel like bigots if they question it. In place of an actual argument, they say, you're doing a trans genocide, you're erasing my existence. You know, there's no substantive response to the critiques. It's just like, for lack of a better word, like cancel culture stuff. And once that became accepted by the institutions, like, you know, a lot of American leftists, at least, are academics or students, you know, and they're not allowed to speak out against this stuff without risking their jobs or risking their scholarships. And you're treated the same way that they would treat someone who's racist now. So I think it was institutionally enforced from the top down, mainly through the academies, which are influenced by, you know, corporate think tanks and NGOs and donors. And they use, and the American left is very, what I would say is professional managerial class, very academic, has struggled for years because of all that CIA infiltration to reach the actual working class, the actual proletariat. And this is the perfect issue for them to keep that divide, to make sure the proletariat never becomes part of the radical left, because to be a radical leftist, you have to accept, you know, pure idealism and boys and girls sports and things.
And do you think that most people have convinced themselves that there's magic prefixes that if uttered turn man woman or woman man or neither, both? How many people do you think actually?
Maybe they did for a little while, but now the amount of people who have told me, like, we all know the gender ideology thing's bullshit, man. I'm like, well, why are you not saying it then? Why are you someone who called us fascists once in public for like not accepting all of this liberal identity politics stuff told me behind the scenes that you know, we all know the gender ideology thing's bullshit. So I'm like, well, then what are you, just a coward? Like you have these positions, and you believe that they're holding back the American left, but you won't say anything about it. So how much do you give a shit about the American left then, and actually fighting imperialism and advancing the struggle of the working class?
No, and I find it kind of funny. It's like if people can't stand up to this, which is basically just acknowledging reality, that there's men and women, and there's a lot of variety. Anything a man does is by definition something a man, you know, can do or feels, and vice versa. So it's all fine about expanding that. So we all have personalities and predilections and whatnot. But if you can't stand up to that, or the idea that this kind of gender spectrum, which is like, do you like Barbie dolls? Are you on the Barbie end of the spectrum or the G.I. Joe spectrum, and saying that is somehow progressive, or, you know, transing the gay away, or autistic kids who have a trouble with puberty because they don't deal with change well, and then pick up this idea, and for whatever reason, you know, it resonates with them. If you can't stand up or at least question it, even, you know, friendly, how are you going to fight capital? How are you going to fight organized capitalism and imperialism if you can't say, you know, you can call yourself what you want and dress how you want, but nobody's sex ever changes, and saying that you have a gender that's different than your sex doesn't change your sex. And so when it matters, it matters. I mean,
Absolutely.
It's not, I mean, easy for me to say because I don't have a job. I don't have something that people can cancel away from me. So that was, you know, I might not be so bold if I was, you know, trying to being up for tenure or, you know, some sort of promotion. I hope I would be, but who knows? But don't you think that it's like, if you can't stand up to this, how are you going to stand up to the, you know, if you can't stand up to the pronoun mob getting mad at you?
Right. Right. And if you're, you know, so long as like this remains our foe. Like, yeah, if you have to walk on eggshells around college students who might freak out at you for questioning that there are less than 69 pronouns, then yeah, how are you going to fight a war against the ruling class? You know, we should be focusing on strategy and reaching workers. And it's like, you know, you say we should reach the working class, and it's like, well, how do you feel about these pronouns and those pronouns and trans identity? It's such a fucking distraction. It's like, I don't give a shit. There's a
I say, you know what I say,
on.
Eddie, because I'm an old mean lady. I say you can take your pronouns and shove them up your bonus hole. That's what I say. But I'm not a political party organizer. Okay. People, that's me saying it. That's not Eddie. Okay.
It's you. Sorry, now I'm gonna have a coughing
Come after
fit.
me. Don't come after Eddie. Yeah.
I'm not coming after Eddie. And listen, you know, I was wondering, so look, the left or communists or however you want to call them, lost a lot of ground on this issue, lost a lot of ground to everybody who had a better position. And they're still talking about it as if it's a matter, and it is a matter of reality. It is, you know, a physical material. That's true. But when can we expect to hear people talking about this from the position of women, that these are women losing their spaces? These are the poorest, the most vulnerable, you know, women in shelters, women in prisons. You know, they're putting male convicts who say that they have lady gender in with women. And, you know, in Canada,
Sex
that means
offenders,
that
murderers.
sex offenders, mostly sex offenders. In Canada, that means that you know, female prisoners live in sort of housing complexes and like a group home kind of thing. So you know, they can even have children. There are mother-children programs. That means that the police are going to have the guards are going to have to start being armed, and they're going to lose their mother-children program because of these men with lady genders. And the sorry, I'm losing my voice first thing in the morning. And the human rights codes have all been amended to you know, prioritize their feelings. And in the States, I think it's even worse. If you hear Amy Ichikawa talking about it, you know, they've got gangs in there. And, you know, when is the left going to start talking about this? Not just as reality. It is reality, fine. But also, this is a real women's issue. You know, women are half the population. Yeah.
Yeah. I had that written down as one of the questions Tara sent was, you know, what are the keys to fixing this? I think one of the keys is framing it as a women's issue, because like I said, a lot of people have had their empathy weaponized by the purveyors of gender ideology. And it's like, well, where's your empathy for women? Where's your empathy for the girls I coach who are being forced to wrestle biological males now? It needs to be framed as an issue of protecting women. That's why I like the protesters at the Iowa tournament that they were saying protect women's sports, protect girls' sports. It's you know, the tolerance ends when you start infringing on the, you know, very basic rights of other people, and that's what this is doing, is infringing on the rights of women. And we don't even need, like, we all know a lot of there's way more male to female transitions than the other way around. And it's just a reality. I know this will offend some people, but it's a reality that a lot of it starts with autogynephilia, with people who are sexually attracted to wearing women's clothing. So you're letting people who have that, you know, sexual tendency in women's locker rooms and stuff. Who's there to protect the women? You know, this is no longer an issue of you need to be empathetic towards the autogynephiliac who wants to shower with women. No, it's not. Okay, don't go near my girls. I'm going to fight you if you do.
Well, and here's, I think, another thing is that I'm assuming, because this is what I also assumed, is that I think a lot of people think that so-called trans women, transsexual, are gay. And a lot of them are not. Even if they were, doesn't mean they're women. But yeah, there are a lot. There's at least the people who have studied this, are two types. There's the really effeminate gay men who, for whatever reason, usually think they'll have a better chance of getting a mate if they transition. This is sexologist talking, so grain of salt. And then there's what they call the autogynephilia, and these are the guys that tend to transition later on. So they'll get married, they'll have kids, they're heterosexual, but they get off on the idea of being the woman, looking like the woman that they have in their mind. Yeah. So these are the ones who want to be transvians, they want to, they want their wife to stay. And it's a sexual thing. It's not always only a dysphoria. It's often it's a variety of things. But the idea that it was able to be identity washed, that all these things, whether it's a paraphilia or a mental illness or a defense mechanism from a reaction to trauma or internalized homophobia or autistic people not being able to deal with, change well, all that stuff. But it's a variety of things, and to put one word on it and then turn it into identity and a human rights issue was really a chef's kiss for these people, I have to say.
It was.
I mean, and it's quite interesting. And a lot of people don't, of course, because they don't want to focus on that. They want to have the face cases be the most sympathetic, which is why they want to focus on the quote unquote invented trans kids so much. The poor trans kid who you're denying their health care. Tanya?
Just that word, trans kids. Sorry, go ahead.
There's trans kids, unfortunately. There's kids who are trans, but that's a different story. Tanya?
Thank you. I was going to say, of course, the men pretending to be women are far, far more important than the women pretending to be men. And it's not because I don't value those women. I do. It's because this whole thing is a men's sexual rights movement. So, the women pretending to be men are far less powerful than the men pretending to be women. They don't get on the sports teams. They're not being put into male prisons and raping the trans women. But geez, I lost my train of thought. How dumb. Sorry, guys.
No, but because I'm sure you probably have this too, Eddie, in terms of the empathy. They want to talk about the trans kid or, which I think is like a vegan cat. And that, that wasn't, I didn't come up with that, but it's a good metaphor. And they want, or what about these, why don't you ever talk about trans men and I go because the thing is that a woman going into a man's space affects that woman. A man going into a woman's space or a girl's space is different. And the people who want to pretend like they don't get it, I again want to tell them to shove it up their bonus hole, because please don't pretend to be an idiot. That's, and I'll bring up Katie Halper if you want to hear a Katie Halper story. Just because it illustrates this.
Can I just jump in before you do that? Because I remembered my point. It's the
please.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. It's the porn. And so I think that you have a political party and you guys have to kind of take a position on that. Do you?
It's in our program. In our program, total abolition of the sex trade and the porn industry. I myself I quit porn like 6 years ago. And the amount of positive effects it's had on my life are immense. It's negative. I don't think about it all day. No, yeah, we're very, very much anti-porn, anti-OnlyFans. And not just because of the exploitation of women that goes on within those industries, which is immense and even extra to regular exploitative jobs, of course. But the effect that it has on especially male brains, where we all have these iPhones and we grow up watching porn, you have to, it pushes you to get more and more edgy, more and more transgressive in order to get off. And it's a terrible spiral that can result in, stuff like this.
Thanks, young man. That's what I wanted to hear. Sorry, I'm done now.
Well, the Wachowski brothers, who are now the Wachowski sisters, who did The Matrix, one of the guys he was on the TED Talk or something. He basically said that sissy porn was instrumental in his transition.
Yeah,
and sissy porn, if you don't know, is guys dressing up as women and being denigrated. So like pissed on, drug around, maybe pooped on, drugged by their, just really demeaned. And there's people who get off pretending to be a woman who's being demeaned. Yeah, I haven't seen any of it, thank God, but I've heard about it.
And there's hypno porn too, where they give you these kind of subliminal messages that you want to do. I don't watch it either. You know who does this? Genevieve Gluck from Redux. She watches all the shit, so we don't have to. Yeah, really, she's gonna need.
I know her. My girlfriend and her were actually like very close friends for a while.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, until October 7th. Yeah, then Anyway, I'm going to hold off on telling my story because you're our guest and I want to hear more from you. So if we have time, I don't know how much time you have, and I'll share it because, even though I like her, she's totally gender bored, which is an odd thing. But I wanted to get to the next thing, if I can find my notes here. So many devices. We kind of talked about this. Already about the culture war thing. And I've noticed that with some, not just Marxists, but leftists, and I find it kind of convenient when people want to be like, oh, it's culture war. We don't do culture war. That's a division. And I always find that kind of a cop out I understand why people don't want to talk about it, but to me, it's very undialectical because it's like, well, you're going to pluck out the culture from the rest of the totality. It's like, where does it come from and what is it an expression of? And also the fact that, why, given that we know that, you can't really change your sex, that there's only, two types of, two models. Why is this so appealing to people? Why are people so alien? Why is it going for it? Not to mention the financial incentives behind it. So what's your take on, and you probably did this before, and maybe everyone had, so not only to put you on the hot seat, but about, we'll leave it to Marxists, even Marxist-Leninists who want to dismiss this as culture war. I think it's because they don't want to talk about it. Is that?
Yeah, definitely. They don't want to deal with the backlash. No, they don't want to deal with the backlash. And it's like, the way that this is used as a culture war distraction is like someone like Matt Walsh. Like, don't get me wrong, his What is a Woman movie made me laugh hard multiple times. But,
he is funny.
He's funny, right? But he's using it as a distraction, right? He's saying, here's this, the left is crazy with this gender ideology stuff. He smears all Marxists as being on board with the gender ideology and says, this is why you should never be a leftist and join the Republican Party. That is culture war.
But he's not wrong, is he?
He's wrong about joining the Republican Party unless you want to keep giving your taxes to end.
No, but in terms of Marxists going along with this, he's not wrong.
Oh, no, there's accuracy in that, which is, I can't expect him to know like what the ACP is and that there's a new, more class-based left emerging, right? No, he'll be terrified of that because it'll ruin his whole grift. Like they use this as a grift. They find one kernel of truth in criticizing gender ideology, and then they use it to grift for the Republican Party. That's culture war manipulation and keeping people divided. Saying that working class girls shouldn't have to compete against males is not culture war. That's class war. Saying that the pharmaceutical companies are pushing this through the media because they make $100,000 per transition surgery. Again, this is a class analysis. This is not a culture analysis. And this is the realization I had to come to myself. And it became easier, as this stuff, like I said, sort of moved from Tumblr into the mainstream. And now it's the hegemony. Right, like MAGA Republicans aren't the hegemony. It's
this is the establishment. Yeah,
this is the establishment. Yes, this is what's being pushed out of the academies, the bourgeois academies. I have to grab it.
No, and I do appreciate that this has been to use a binary, been put as a left-right issue. And I have this, I don't know if you were up on the Amain Khalif thing, the boxer who was in the Olympics.
Yeah.
Who was, who turns out has, we could all see he was a guy, but had like anyway. And people were just like livid. People were just livid. Like, no, she's a girl. I'm like, it's not, that is, a guy with the DSM disorder is not a girl. And you can tell by looking at him that that's the case. And also how he interacts with other men. But anyway, and one person let the cat out of the bag. I was like, what are you, like the president of his fan club or something? And she's like, no, I just don't like right wingers who are trying to, make hay out of this. And I was like, lady, I'm further left than you are. And it kind of just reinforced that some people just pick the side because they think it's the opposite of the other. So this is so to be critical of gender ideology or the gender Inc. is a right wing thing, and so they just go with that, and it's like, okay,
it's become part of the leftist checklist. Yeah, you have to meet this whole checklist of different social issues in order to be considered a true leftist. And that's, enforced in the parties. Like I said, with the PSL and DSA, if you speak out against this, you're not allowed to be a member. It's like, you really think you're going to reach the proletarians of America if you force every member of your party to embrace gender ideology? I mean, it's pure delusion, but it's exactly why this is so great for the CIA. It's like the left is like a bird that wants to fly away, and the obsession with identity politics and gender ideology is a chain around its leg that prevents us from reaching people with the message of anti-imperialism and class struggle that anyone could agree with.
Yeah. And do you think, Eddie, that one of the reasons, because I was thinking about this when I was watching the crazy presidential election, when they was talking about masculinity and the Democratic Party was putting out ads like we were in the 1960s or something, and everybody was, like the Mad Men thing. And I was like, and this idea that is one of the reasons why the left broadly considers, so anything, from liberals to progressives to some sort of at least nominally Marxists, they push so hard on the gender and the race because it's all they have.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. There's no substance. It's the Democratic Party's MO, and they don't know any way out of it, and Trump has realized like, I can rail against the endless wars, and I can talk about bringing manufacturing jobs back. And even if I don't do it, the Democrats aren't doing it anyways. So people are going to vote for me. Whereas the Democrats the Democrats are like, I wonder why we keep losing the Rust Belt states, or the states like Iowa, as we're pushing gender ideology and identity politics as our only platform. It's like, no shit, you're losing. Nobody cares about that. Or they don't like
and you also think that what is it to put a flag or a pin or pronouns in your bio, or to say, oh, isn't it great that people are living their authentic selves as the opposite sex or something, compared to trying to restructure, like, tax policy, healthcare, the relations of production and all of that. Right. I mean, and I don't know if maybe the left has to have a special cast and they decide to put the freaks to the front or something. I mean, nothing wrong with freaks. Like, have your freaks and your crazy people, but to put them in the front of the ship is odd to me.
PSL the other day had a transgender. It was a male to female person who was teaching a class on Roe versus Wade and abortion rights. Like, that's how insane this has gotten, where you have I know
I think it's
what?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
It's just a crazy situation where the left, now has males teaching females about their own bodies, about abortion.
Yeah.
And it's just a wild state of affairs that we're in. But I think there just needs to be a movement like the ACP. Honestly, obviously, I'm biased, but like, who says no, we're rooted in class. You can, whatever, we don't really care about your identity. You can still join as long as you're not pushing idealism on our members and stuff like that. But as far as what we stand for ending the wars and investing all that money in healthcare and education and transforming the system into one that serves the working class, and we're tolerant of different people's views on these social issues. I think that's what it's going to take. And I think that by itself will attach to workers more easily. Now, every single CIA, every single element of the CIA left is going to unite against us the same way those kind of elements united against the Bolsheviks in Russia. But if you get to the masses, it doesn't really matter, because you have, hordes of people on your side then who think with common sense and not with this academic leftoid brainwashing.
Yeah. And I think maybe some people just need more options, and they won't be thinking about what bespoke gender identity or something they could, in order to self-actualize, they can have other, material and collective projects to be part of. Tanya? You have something to
just
say?
An ACP.
I love your scarf, by the way. You're looking lovely over there.
You know what? It was so cold in the morning. It's not a real scarf because I didn't want to get out the wool and look all crazy. So I'm a little cold, but it's warming up. But thank you so much. Housekeeping for ACP. Just a question. So I'm remembering Derek Jensen and Liger Keith from Deep Green Resistance on a podcast years ago, and they were talking about how at one of their conferences or something, they had a man pretending to be a woman come, and they said, look, it's fine, but you have to, you have to use the men's spaces, right? Like you're welcome to be here, you're welcome to join everything, but you got to stay in the men's spaces, right? Is that sort of the ACP? Is that the ACP policy
I guess
as
we
well?
haven't laid it out
She wants to know, like, are your bathrooms gender neutral, or do you have?
I guess we don't have any party bathrooms. Yeah,
we just have one.
We haven't had too many like things divided by gender in general, I guess. So we haven't had to concretize that. But I've been told by members of the party that, I'm not using pronouns that are not accurate to what the biological sex is. I refuse.
I call them vanity pronouns.
What's that?
I call them vanity pronouns.
Vanity pronoun.
A lot of us
and
do vanity pronouns.
Yeah, and to their credit, there's a couple members of the party who have done the transition and stuff. They're okay with that, right? They accept it, and they have to accept it to be in the party. But yeah, like you said, no, do what you want, keep it in the bedroom though. And if we're dividing anything by male and female, it's like, for example, we would never do what PSL did and have a male teaching a class that's designed for women. That's absurd, and it needs to be, those spaces need to be protected, and the biological women of our party, or the women period of our party, need to be protected in that way. So I guess I hesitate because it's not something we've discussed, but I imagine that everybody feels the same way.
I get that. I don't want to make you. I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, it's a good question.
It's like, are there tampons in the men's room at the ACP?
Definitely not.
Let's see. We know Noah wants tampons in the men's room. No, I'm kidding.
Noette.
Watching
Don't dead name him. It's Noette.
Noel. Okay, so I think I wanted to ask, but I think we already covered this. But if not, if you have anything just to say about, I guess we already talked about why people haven't been speaking up. But I think, I don't know, maybe this is maybe not be a Marxist issue, but maybe it could be, because I know that I'm going to ask you anyway, because, there's rumors, of course, that the ACP and Midwestern Marx and Infrared have are hate feminists and are dens of misogyny. I'm trying. I don't think that, but there's been, because I wouldn't know. And the reason why I asked this is because we have a theory, us ladies, is that maybe one of the reasons why some guys are hesitant to speak up is because they think that feminists are getting their comeuppance. Like they like seeing this, like, well, you want it to be, it's equality, and so then and especially if they go through the Judith Butler type of stuff. So it's the idea that, well, you made your bed feminist, now you should lay in it.
Oh wow!
Do you think?
That's a really
have you?
That's hard.
I'm just. Do you think there's anything to that, or is that more of a right thing? Because we get that on the right as well. Like, if you don't like it, they'll tell you, like, online. If you don't like it, it's not. Blame the feminists. They're the reason why they're men pretending to be women. And I'm like, okay.
You wanted to be equal, and now you are. Suck it. And I think that applies to sport too. Like, a lot of these guys that are coming down and saying no, men and women's sport, they're saying that because they like the idea that men are better at sport. Men are stronger, men are faster. They like that. When it comes to women's shelters, they don't care, right? When it comes to women's toilets, they don't care. When it comes to sport,
the poor women in prisons, they're the last on the list because it's hard to get people to care about prisoners. And
right.
Really.
But yeah, and I want to be careful that I'm not spreading those rumors. But I just want to get, since you're a dude, I mean, I don't want to assume. I'm assuming you're a dude, Eddie. But do you think there's anything to that maybe it's kind of like, or even if it's a subconscious level of a kind of Schadenfreude, like, oh, look at these girls, they're trying to.
I mean,
they can't say, they'll get in trouble if they say that guy's a guy, and isn't it funny? Or
I mean, I didn't even I haven't encountered that much, I guess. Which is why it took me a while to even understand what you meant by feminists getting their comeuppance. But now that you say it, I'm sure that that's a latent thing on the right, especially with like young boys who, I remember that being a thing for me when I was a boy, when I was in high school, always arguing that men are superior to women in sports. And, even though most of the girls you talk to would agree with that, it feels good to make that argument. Oh, we're better. So I'm sure it's a thing. Nobody on the ACP has ever expressed anything like that to me, though. And like I said, I view this as a women's issue. The struggle for women's wrestling to even exist was a long struggle. It was difficult. It came with many hurdles. It came with women constantly being dismissed. But it was something. And then once it caught on, it exploded. I have just as many girl athletes almost as I have male athletes in a combat sport like wrestling. That's amazing. But now that they can compete against, other women, they're really falling in love with the sport in the same way that I did when I was a kid. And that's beautiful to see. And it's tragic to see that that's now being infringed upon by liberal bourgeois institutions trying to push males into their spaces. So I don't see it that way, but I'm sure there's a hint of that on the right for sure. Absolutely.
Oh, it's not just on the right, Eddie.
No,
There's people on the left who feel like that.
Oh, we call them woke
examples?
bros.
That's shocking to
We call
me.
them woke bros. The tuts and the tutters. It's just like transphobe and what is it to you and reactionary and blah blah. All this stuff. The woke bros love to. There's something. I don't know. Again, it's online, so it's hard to read. But there just seems to be some enjoyment in that, and it could just be they don't. Sometimes you wonder if they even care, or they just like because. If you can basically call a woman anything you want under the pretense of trans rights.
Yeah, it's a men's rights movement for sure.
So
and then they say women advocating for their own interests are an identity group. Like we're not a bloody identity group. Hello.
Right. I would encourage anybody who thinks that way to come to a practice sometime and see how hard my girls are working to achieve their goals in wrestling, and then to laugh at them for a male being thrown in their bracket and be like, oh, you had this coming. What the fuck do you mean they had it coming? They're 14. They're 14 trying
just
to
have to work
chase their
harder.
dreams. Right. So
did you want to read?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
I
just want to know because I don't know how much time
for what the CIA left has pushed. So yeah.
And I just want to say that for women, of course, the general thing, but also kids get caught up in this, and from either for whatever reason, like the idea that you have parents who actually say they were waiting for their toddler to let them know what gender they were. I'm like, are you kidding me?
I made that joke to my cousin. He told me he's having a girl the other day, and I'm like, don't say that. You don't know what its gender is yet. He's like from
what toy they like, Oh my God. Or, the gay or the all kinds of things. So, but it's crazy. Anyway, I wanted, do you want to go, you sent me this. Should we read it out?
Sure. Yeah. This is from one of the parents.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Can you see it or do I need to squint?
I can see it. Yeah. Do you want me to read it?
Okay,
this is
go ahead. Please go ahead.
This is from one of the parents whose daughter or her daughter's teammates, I'm not sure exactly what, was put into a bracket and not able to wrestle at state because they didn't want to wrestle a biological male. State tournament's the big tournament for kids of this age, and it got like over 1,000 likes, and there was a petition started on change.org, which maybe I should have shared the link to that too, because I signed the petition, which was like my first time. Yeah. I encourage everybody to sign that because it's a small petition.
We'll get all the
it's
tags
a small
to sign it.
Yeah, let's blow it up, and then I'll become the face of fighting this shit in Iowa, I guess. But
you'll have people behind you, and if you need the tough, need someone to come in and say stuff, you just tag me in, Eddie.
I appreciate that. I will. I'm gonna try and spread this podcast
let's read.
around.
Shall we read this?
Yeah. It says, protect our girls, protect their sport. As I'm sure you have all seen the post about the boy in the girls bracket at USA State this weekend. My daughter was the one that would have had to wrestle him. Yes, he is really a boy. Yes, he wants to wrestle girls, but has wrestled boys all season. Yes, USA does allow youth to pick whatever gender they want. USA Wrestling, does allow youth to pick whatever gender they want to identify as before they hit puberty. So what happened? Our daughter was listed in the bracket with said boy. She was going to forfeit her matches to stand up for all girl wrestlers. We did receive a call last night from USA letting us know that they would be offering to combine their brackets because of the social media post. They gave the boy his award last night and told him he didn't have to come today. He is a USA state champ in the girls bracket and will now continue to compete in the girls bracket at all USA events. So now this boy has been given a state title because none of the girls in the bracket wanted to wrestle them. It's well known that the mom of this athlete is a little bit out there, as you can imagine, trying to push their kids into these girls brackets or their kid into the girls bracket. So he is a USA state champ in the girls bracket and will now continue to compete in the girls bracket. Yep. Just because he didn't have someone to wrestle this time doesn't mean he won't next time. This was allowed once. It's going to continue to happen. So what can we do? Stop attending and signing up for USA Wrestling events. Our club is done after this. He also does not wrestle for Empire Academy as a singlet and continues to wear it. That's their wrestling academy. So please don't associate this to that club. Take a stand for the girls, put a stop to this. And then Empire Wrestling Academy, who I guess the trans athlete was wearing their singlet, was the one who was holding the Protect Girls Sports and saying, don't associate us with this. We're against it. So the girls took a stand, but that one athlete was deprived of a state title and being able to compete. And like I said, a biological male now has a girls' state trophy. And who knows where this will go from
all
here.
the crap the girls have to go on and have to deal with this, and the parents and the coach. It's just so ridiculous. This magic word gender. You get to pick your gender. It's like there's no such thing.
That mom could have
There's
been
no
me.
consistent, coherent definition. And anybody who on the chat who wants to argue with me, we did a whole series based on amicus briefs about how gender is dandelion. Anyway,
Gender is nonsense.
What were you saying?
That mom could have been me, right?
Yeah.
Because I've got a daughter who is a crazy wrestler, and it's she's been doing it at the highest level possible in her age category. I mean, I don't want to give it away because she'd be like, "Oh, mom, my God," right? She's still all teenager. Well, I guess I just did, and it could have been.
we haven't even said what country you're from.
Well, yeah, I've been through so much with just the ups and downs of I have to lose weight, I have to gain weight, I have to lose weight and gain muscle. I have to win. My coach is mean. He's not like her coach isn't like you, Eddie. He's a monster. He's like a monster. He's not like you. I've been through so much. Sorry, now I'm going to go all crazy. Oprah, this is my Oprah minute. I've been through so much.
We're all friends here. We're all comrades.
I watch the matches like this anyway because it's so violent. Right? Like, my daughter has cauliflower ears. She really does.
Oh wow, she's serious, huh?
So I watch them like this anyway. So if that was me, like that woman Samantha Lee, is that her name? If you give her my love, because she's got my sympathy. Because
I'm gonna send them this podcast, I think, and tell them like people are taking a stand and have your guys' back here. So
and there's
and I'll try to collate other organizations in different states and different sports that have done this, and they can give if this continues, it might as well don't reinvent the wheel. And there's quite a bit more out there than you think because it hasn't been it's been so stealth and not publicized, but there's been a lot going on, especially on the sports front.
And Trump will probably do an executive order.
I mean, I just can't. I just can't imagine. And I don't have kids with this problem, but I don't know if people can't tell their kid no. I tell my kids no like 80% of the time.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like this mom who's trying to enter the transgender athlete. Like, I would love to be a fly on the wall in their home and see what's going on there. Because everyone said, people, I don't want to get too much into the personalities, but they're like, this mom is very over the top and a bit crazy anyways, which you would imagine if she's allowing the the son to dress as a girl and compete in girls sports. And it's like part of this is just like a lack of discipline too, and parents telling, like, I mean, people have made this argument a million times, but like kids think they're dinosaurs. A kid will tell you that they're a zebra or something, and you say, you don't take them at their word and say, oh wow, you must actually be a dinosaur somewhere on the inside. The true you is a dinosaur. No, you are. You are my favorite quote is, we are what we repeatedly do. We are what we are. You can't just invent something that you are in your head and then expect the whole world to conform. I never won a state title. I can't say I identify as a state champ, so you have to call me one. So I think
I identify as the most beautiful and rich woman in the world. I identify as 5'8" and a size 10.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm 18. I'm 18.
Tanya has age dysphoria. She does.
I have age dysphoria, totally.
She
Like,
wakes
I'm
up in
up
the
all
middle of
night
the night
going, I'm
worried
almost
about how
dead.
much time
I'm
she has
almost dead.
left.
Yeah, I'm almost dead.
Justice for trans
Yeah.
age.
And also on that note, I mean, people know this, but they just pretend that they don't. My kids are 11, 12, and 18. Even my 18-year-old son, if I worked on him for a couple of hours, I could convince that kid of anything.
Yep.
I mean, you can. It's just, especially this whole apparatus to support it. And encouraging people to genderbread person and to think about your gender. And I'm like, why would you tell young kids that? They already are crazy enough. To
my
plant
mom's
those seeds in there, those concepts is crazy.
Yeah, my parents are like very tolerant people, but they had a friend whose daughter was in a class where the teacher was trans, and then the daughter ended up saying that she's gender nonconforming, and now it's about, I believe, 40% of that teacher's class is now saying they're gender nonconforming, because if that's what your mentors and people are telling you at that age, you can believe anything, especially me. Kids look at me as like cool or whatever compared to their parents because I'm their wrestling coach and stuff like that. Like you said, I could convince them of anything because they don't know anything. That's your job as an adult, is to teach them about the world. And I don't know, I see it as a form of child abuse in some ways.
It is.
No, go ahead, Tanya.
As far as teachers, so I've run into this. Some teachers will be like, okay, well, I believe everyone should have free speech, so I will not force my students to call, Mrs. Jones, Mr. What I mean? I won't force my students to use the vanity pronouns because I believe in free speech. But if you're a teacher and there's a guy pretending to be a woman teaching and you're going along with it, then all the students are going to go along with it too, right? So that's a really tricky thing. Do you have any insights about that?
Oh, it's tough. It's tough. I have a lot of people in my family. I won't out them so they don't get attacked, but I have a lot of people in my family who work in education, and it's like they have to walk on eggshells all the time. But the thing I encourage them to do and that they do is just try to get the kids involved in something more productive, because a lot of these kids are alienated, spending way too much time on the internet. Maybe they are on the autism spectrum or whatever else. And, if you get them involved in something like wrestling where they have community and they learn self-respect and the value of hard work.
Using with their bodies.
Yeah, they're
right. Their bodies develop, right. It kind of, they forget about all this stuff. You don't see a lot of this stuff with kids who are, active, have a lot of friends, social, it's the kids who are like socially isolated and are looking for something, whether it be attention or whatever else. So it's just trying to encourage kids to get involved with something more productive. But yeah, there's a time when you just have to say no, I feel like, to the delusion.
Yeah, it's really important, right? If they see role models, and female but also male role models, kids see, like, no, you don't have to pretend that man's a woman. No, you don't have to pretend it's okay that he's in your toilet. You don't have to pretend it's okay that he's talking to you about your period or trying to give you a tampon, or it's really important. There's a lot of gaslighting going on, and I think the kids are the most susceptible. And even at universities now, they have like signs in toilets that say, if you see someone in this toilet that you think doesn't belong, just shut your mouth, because that's bigot, right? Like, shut your mouth. So,
Well,
and it's
really
so weird to get it with the amnesia, Tanya. Remember, like, I remember taking a self-defense class. I can't remember when it was. I think my dad was like, "Oh, you need," when I first moved out to the big city, and I was like, "Whatever." But the first thing they say is to trust your instinct, your inner voice.
Yeah.
And now this is telling you not to do that.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yep.
like that. It's just like no. And it's so,
Total
it's
brainwashing.
so. Oh my God, volumes written out. Once we can finally study this, Eddie, I mean, volumes. Just because I want to study, I want to study how women's studies became gender studies, kind of. I want to get into that. But well, that's not my first thing, because first we got to have the dictatorship of the proletariat. But I wanted to speaking of Alexander McKay, he texted me 2 things he wanted me to ask you if I could, since you're based in the States.
Please do.
So I think we covered it, but just in case. So ask him his opinion on if the embrace of gender ideology by the left is the consequence of the utter divorce from the working class the left has carried out over the last generation.
Totally. Like I said, it's only the left has become very professional, managerial class and academic, where these things are, actually enforced, like rigidly enforced by HR departments, who, will, if you say something like this, they'll claim you're harassing or being bigoted towards your coworkers, and they'll give you real tangible punishments. Same with colleges. The last college I worked at, I had to agree to a diversity statement that said I would basically be, like not discriminate against trans people, and then like actively seek out people of different identities, and rather than recruiting them based on the quality of their character, recruit them based on whatever identity issues. And the left is made up of a lot of people, and like I said, if you force everybody in your party, in your socialist, communist, supposedly pro-worker party, to agree with this idealist concept that's coming out of the petty bourgeois classes, out of the academy, and not the proletariat, you're never going to be connected to the proletariat, because the proletariat will never accept this stuff. And you see people like Emma Vigeland, they can almost instinctually, you can tell when they're ranting about these issues, but don't even believe what they're saying. They've convinced themselves out of what they know is logically correct in order to fall in line with what's socially acceptable on the left. And so long as this is what the left is made up of, it'll never, rebuild that connection with the proletariat that we're trying to do with the ACP. So I think it's absolutely a product of that, and not just that, but it's making the divide worse. And I think it's designed to do that. Maybe it wasn't designed that way, but once the CIA recognized that this gender ideology stuff was taking off, they're like, okay, this is a perfect issue for us to push into the American left to make sure they never get back to the working class roots of what communism and socialism.
Well, yeah, and people don't like to be gaslit. They don't like to, what I call the big sister gender speak. They don't like being lied to. So it's one thing if you have, like, some people want to, we had before, it's like some people that used to call it transsexuals or whatever, okay, fine, tolerate, whatever. But then it was this whole other thing. And now, people don't, it's crazy. But one more thing, and from him, and I think I think he's asking the same question twice, but I'll let you be the judge, Eddie. Ask him his opinion on why the left, on what are dismissed. Okay, ask him his opinion on why the left, on what is dismissed as cultural issues, simply follow the progressive wing of the bourgeoisie. I think it's his way of saying is the left is basically the left wing of the bourgeoisie, mainly.
Yes, it's I mean, this is a problem with the left in general, is there's so many what we call rad libs. They're people who accept what the left wing of the bourgeoisie says on all of these cultural issues, and then they think to be radical, to be Marxist, is to like basically just threaten violence, threaten to kill anybody who doesn't agree with you. You don't agree with gender ideology, I'll kill you. I've heard people say that. That's what they think Marxism
You're a Nazi, is. Yeah.
Right. You're a liberal, but you're a more violent liberal. Like, no, that's just a more unhinged liberal. Marxism is something different. Marxism,
Mhm.
you know, when you start reading theory, it changes your worldview and changes the way that you see things in a way that's not just moving, you know, to the left of the Democratic Party on the same, or like, you know, being more violent and supporting the same issues that the Democratic Party supports. It's about cutting through the bullshit and saying, you know, what are the class dynamics at play here? Not just the left-right dynamics, which is a left-right that's been set up by the bourgeoisie, but what are the class dynamics here? And once you start to break it down from that sense, you realize that gender ideology is something being pushed from the top down on working class communities. And as are a lot of these, you know, these liberal, this liberal hyper obsession with identity politics and distraction from class politics.
Sorry, Eddie,
Tanya?
will you say something about Antifa? Because speaking of violence, they purportedly from the left have been beating up women TERFs. They've beat up Kara Dansky and they've beat up Amy Souza. They've beat up all sorts of women who just, you know, stand on the street corner talking about our rights. You know, they threaten them. They've damaged their property. and so when people see this and they're like, wow, the left sure hates women. Look at there's Antifa beating up women who are just standing here talking about their sex-based rights, or, you know, tell me about Antifa, whatever you know about.
Or how women's prisons are for women and women's sports are for women. And these guys who they say they're Antifa, we call them Trantifa. They say they're Antifa, of course, and then they're just. That's what I'm saying. It's like open season, you know. What typically people would say you can't do that is if it's, oh, we're doing it because they're saying stuff about trans, and all of a sudden it's, you know, open season. You can say and do whatever you want, say and practically do anything you want to women who are saying, yeah, there are no male women, and that's very much on the left.
Yeah,
or they say they're on the left.
Right. Antifa is a perfect, concrete, material example of what I was just explaining with this, like, we accept all of the liberal positions and then we'll kill you or beat you up if you don't accept them. I was thinking of some people on Twitter who have said, you know, like, I'll beat up a TERF or whatever, but they're a perfect institute, you know, like an actual organization or collective or ideology that does exactly that. And if you look at like 1930s Germany, when Hitler was coming to power, it was the Social Democrats, the radlibs, the radical, you know, supposed leftists who sided with the Nazis to beat up and kill the communists. And it's like these people like Antifa who are going out and beating up Marxists or claiming that, you know, Marxists need to be killed for upholding materialism. That is the left wing of fascism. That is fascism. You are social fascists. That's what Marxists have always called people like this, is social fascists, because they side. You know, like we said, the gender ideology is the establishment ideology. It is the mainstream. It is the hegemony. And these people are going out and beating the shit out of anybody who doesn't agree with the ruling class, with the hegemony. That's what the social fascists did in Germany that helped the Nazis rise to power. So it's like these people are playing the role that they've always played of actually being fascists, but they, you know, call themselves Antifa and claim that they're the ones fighting fascism. It's turning reality on its head.
Well, then it fits right in with that. Yeah, I mean, this idea that that people seem to think that all of this is for a handful of people who have gender dysphoria or guys who really want to, you know, dress like their mom or something. It's like it's the corporations, it's you know, Pritzkers and Rothblatts, it's all these really powerful and rich philanthropic things that have investments in tech and medicine. It's the you know, it's the Democratic Party, it's all these lawyers. It's like this is not oppressed, politically unpowerful movement.
No, not some grassroots movement.
And I want to mention Jennifer Billick because of the capitalism part of it. It's like her argument has been, this is the canary in the coal mine. This is the gateway to transgender capital, transgender, you know, the transhuman kind of fourth industrial revolution and whatnot. It starts with breaking down gender and commodifying or genderizing. I like to say that, you know, one day I'll finish this paper about how is the gentrification of sex, like the initial form other types of proletarianization, and of making reproduction more and more a commodity as people have to wait longer to get pregnant, or there's surrogates, or now there's this thing that gay, wealthy gay men want to have, I don't know, rent a womb or whatever. This idea that everybody who wants a baby should have a baby, regardless of the choices that they make, regardless if there's a woman involved or not. And people want to dismiss this as just like a minority, oppressed minority issue, when it so clearly is not. If you allow yourself, or if you're allowed to think about it for a moment, and what gets, and I'm sure it's really frustrating for you as well, because you're a lovely man, is that Tanya and I know very few TERFs who want to be mean to kids. We want to save them, or help prevent people from going down this track that's irreversible.
Yes.
And sometimes you help people by saying no, or saying things when everybody else is saying, yeah, great. And you're like, and so that's just a bit of a rant, but this idea that the left has convinced itself, or has been convinced, that this is just the most oppressed minority ever, it doesn't withstand any scrutiny, which is, I guess, why people like Emma Vigeland can't tolerate it even being contemplated.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And it's Bridget O'Quillan sort of helped me change my view on this, or not change, but she helped improve the way that I see this, and that she frames a lot of the people who have been indoctrinated as victims. And I know I was raised evangelical, and sometimes these evangelical churches are very strict, very draconian. The kids feel repressed, and this is their way of rebelling. And it's like, there are other ways to rebel against the system that are more productive, that aren't gonna change your body and your hormones for life and lead to all of these different problems. And I see, I see those people as victims now. I don't hate them, I don't treat them like shit, but it's like, I wish, I would have had more influence on your life to tell you, no, this is not, gonna make your life better and solve all your problems. And you're actually going to be more depressed dealing with all these hormone issues if you go ahead and mutilate your body, thinking that it's going to solve every problem that you have in this life. Your problems are rooted in something else.
Yeah.
No, for sure. Tanya, did you have something to say?
Bridget, yes, I think that Bridget that Eddie just mentioned, I think I listened to her podcast. Is that right? Is she the one with the podcast?
Probably canceled her podcast now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
she's an ACP.
I found
nice.
Good. It's been like, so not so much anymore, but it was at one point, it was like being in the desert, and whenever you found a TERF in the wild, it was like, awesome. And and Bridget's podcast she's been doing that for a while, so she was one of them. And it's great when they have the same sort of political leanings as you do, because I listened to it. And I want to mention Julian Vigo's podcast, Savage Minds. Her very first guest was Noam Chomsky. She's great, Julian Vigo. Her very first guest was Noam Chomsky, and she asked him about genderism, and he was just like, get off my lawn. He didn't want to engage at all. And since that episode, she has asked every single one of her guests, even if they were there to talk about something else, she's asked every single one about genderism. So she's been fearless. It's the Savage Minds podcast. Yeah, great podcast.
And I just wanted to, when you were before that, what you were talking about, the people who get caught up in this. I also think that it's so odd when someone wants to say it's not a big deal, or especially if it's someone who's on the socialist or communist side. It's like, I thought we weren't supposed to be hyper individualist, and what could be more individualist than this? And it just seems, and as if redefining man and woman, boy and girl, is somehow a small thing that doesn't affect everyone, since we're all men or women or boys or girls. It's
Right.
just like, I mean, I know we're not all in the, I know we are fairly urban and lots of us have, IT work or whatnot, but it's just amazing. Are so many people so alienated from their body that this disassociation is somehow coded as progressive or left, or even Marxists? They'll tell you, oh, Engels wrote that he wanted to abolish the family. I'm like, he wanted to sublate the bourgeois family. It's like the family changes along with he'll come back, along with the relations of production. The whole thing was just to be at least, basically some Marxists here. So you have the forces and relations of production, reproduction, of course, which the family is one of those, and male and female relations. And it was never the point to get beyond male and female. I mean,
so ridiculous. You know what? If all of
Marx
the
knew that his wife was a woman,
right?
Yeah.
All of the anti-Marxists are screaming Marxist, Marxist, Marxists. Then the Marxists with their
Marx knew that his wife was a woman and that his daughter was a woman and that he was a dude. We were just talking, Eddie, about, I'm sure you've experienced this, so people will pluck out something, especially from Engels, and we're like, oh, Eddie's gone again. Well, anyway, we'll see if he comes back. We've kept him for 2 hours. He probably has to. Oh, no, okay.
Yeah, look at the time.
Let's see if he can. Oh, he's on a third device. Eddie has backup devices. Sorry, people, just talk amongst yourselves.
There's a great chat. This Kush look.
Yeah, it's very good. Look. He's lovely.
And and there's Jenny Lynn. And
please don't, everybody listening, don't put my words in Eddie's mouth. Yeah, those were my words.
Yeah, I've been so nice. I haven't said a thing. I haven't used the T word, even in the chat.
You look lovely.
Thank you. Someone said Looney Tunes, and I was just typing Looney, and I stopped myself. I'm not going to type that word.
Yeah,
I deserve.
No, I knew that this would bring out the alphabet brigade and their protectors. So I was gonna go, hey Eddie.
Sorry, I was so angry.
You have lots of devices.
About that distortion of Engels' origins. I had to storm out.
Hey Eddie, we were just talking about how lovely this has been. But I want to be cognizant of your time. We've been going for about 2 hours. How are you feeling?
Good. Do you guys have any more questions you want to hit? I could stick around for a couple more if there's more on the agenda.
I think we've kind of covered everything. I think. Cool. So I don't know if you want, I can play the Emma thing if you wanted to respond to that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, okay. So you guys can talk for a moment, and I'm gonna pull up that clip.
Cool.
Let's see. So no dead air, Tanya. I'm gonna pull up the
clip. No dead air. Eddie, if you come my way, you and your girlfriend, I hope you'll look us up.
Absolutely. Me up.
Share screen.
Come to my country. And I'll take you to all the wrestling.
That'd be great.
Right. Not that I want to, because I still don't know the rules after all these years of watching it. I still don't know what the hell's going on, except for violence, blood. Blood.
How did your daughter get into that?
It was my husband's fault. When she was little, I thought, oh, good, this is something they can do together.
I'm 100% right on this. Argument is really bad.
Okay. Let's see. Do I have?
I was a bad mother.
Where am I at now? Oh, I do have it. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to play this, and hopefully we can hear it.
Bad on this, and you're out of your depth. You're correct that trans women should be able to compete in women's sports, but your argument for it is just scientifically and factually incorrect. I'm actually not bad about this. I'm 100% right on this. I don't give a shit about the scientific explanations. People, if they identify as a woman, get to compete in sports. If that's not fair in the short term for a variety of little competitions, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit, because the societal interest of including trans people in society trumps stupid competition. Full stop. So I'm right about this. You're wrong about this.
Damn.
Anyway. Dr. Shock, I agree. Let's get rid of weight classes in all combat sports. Perhaps have grown man compete in Little League. Sometimes life's not fair. Whatever.
Oh, the knees, and that's it. Fallen, game over.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
When I saw that, the amount of rage Because, I mean, one, she's getting so emotional because she knows she's wrong. She knows what she's saying is bullshit, and she's getting called out on it. But at the same time, she's mocking the competition. It's like, fuck you. You're not working with these kids every day. This doesn't affect you. You're not a coach. You're a fucking political commentator. And you want to tell me as a coach of young girls that their competitions don't matter and they need to wrestle boys? Fuck yourself. I'm sorry to use that language, but it's so infuriating.
Oh, it's okay, Eddie. It's okay, Eddie. Let it fly.
She's not even attached to kids' sports. So quit telling me that I need to accept this as a coach and tell my girls that they need to wrestle boys because it's, you know, better for the community that you're pandering to on your shitty liberal show.
No kidding.
Well, and it's so crazy because it's like, because they're so indignant, like or when people say, oh, you know, trying to keep trans, quote unquote, trans women out of the women's room is like trying to keep black women out of they love to use that. Yeah. It's like,
they're so racist.
Segregating based on race is not the same as segregating based on, it's like, if you know, it's just stupid. It's like, who else would do this? The idea that, you know, well, there's some people who want to pretend that the opposite sex, and so everyone just has to suck it up and pretend. And if not, you're the bad one. She doesn't, I don't know if she has a friend who groomed her, if she has a cousin who's now, you know, or a nephew who's now a niece, or what the deal is. But when some people are that hardcore, I'm like, because I can understand it, especially if it's somebody who doesn't want to get sued for malpractice when this goes the way of the lobotomy. But I can imagine, and Helen Joyce has said this, that if you were a parent or you were intricate in pushing someone along this path, especially the medicalization thing, then it would be really hard to turn around and be like, oh, oopsie.
Right?
You know, I shouldn't have told my son that he can be a girl and everyone will accept him.
Right.
Even Blanchard said that about self-reporting with the troons after they have their, with the men who have their, now I'm all off track. But even Blanchard said that with the self-reporting. Like once you get that cut off, what are you going to do? You know, you have to kind of run with it, right? Like, yay.
And for her and Hassan Piker, like so much of their audience has been built off of supporting the trans community or whatever, and they can't go back on it now. They'll lose money. And it's like too bad. It's a good thing my TikTok account got banned because it allowed me to be more free, you know, and not worrying about pissing people off.
No, but it's just so I always want to know, like, are they only seeing people with the filters or whatnot? Or they only think it's like Dylan Mulvaney, like these, you know,
right.
Even still, it's like, you know, not that it would matter, but it's just like, I always think like, sure, Hassan, and maybe he is a chaser. I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me. Who knows about that guy? But it's just always like, sure, you know, there are TRAs on the streets, but turfs in the streets. So I want to be like, if you really want to support trans rights, they have hard times with dates, you know, because of the sexual apartheid. People who don't want to, want to gender the penis, because most of them don't get the bottom surgery because you can't enjoy yourself as much if you don't have your equipment. And it's like, he should be dating them if he cares so much about it. I mean, it's just, and we have I don't know if you probably have heard of the phrase trans maid before, Eddie. Have you heard this?
I actually haven't.
Trans maid.
Oh, okay. Not deep enough into this.
It's Julia Burchill, who was a fantastic TERF, but unfortunately a raging Zionist. But she wrote an article, I think it was Spiked, or was it for The Spectator in the UK, called Trans Maid, and she had it basically saying that, you know, it's basically kind of like The Handmaid's Tale, but only if the guy has a dress. So you'll always put a guy in, you know, the guy in the dress, or the trans guy, his feelings, his needs and wants above women's always. And it's also, we talk about this in terms of class, it's a luxury belief, because they're not the ones that are going to have to really come face to face with this.
Right.
You know, you know, it's just, it's crazy it's so indignant. I don't care. Trans inclusion's important. So if they want to play in the girls' sports and blah, 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 blah. It's like,
she was ridiculous. That's Sarah Silverman did that too.
She should go suck a girl dick and shove it up her bonus hole. That's what I would say. Sorry. It's been years and years of this. parents have no patience because it does real harm.
Yeah. And they
Yeah.
promised us it wouldn't. For how
See.
long? They promised us it's just adults. Just let adults do what they want. We'll leave the kids alone. We'll leave the sports alone. Well, here we are now. And you're calling us bigots for not wanting our girl athletes who we work with every day to compete against people with extreme biological advantages that could hurt them in a combat sport.
It's amazing how these things keep
Well,
happening.
you mean man. Go ahead, Tanya.
No, it's
You're
just
all the bad words, Eddie.
all the bad words. All
Every
of the,
phobe.
right?
Yeah.
It's just
Welcome.
own it at this point, right? Yeah.
Well, on that note, anybody want to? So, Eddie, I really appreciate it. Hopefully, this isn't the last time we cross I don't know, streams. It's called. I really appreciate you coming on and on this issue, because even though it has been fun, even though things seem to be easing up a bit, it's still a risk. And again, I want to say that don't put any of my words in Eddie's mouth. My words are my words, not Eddie's.
And don't use the language.
He tried
of
to
the
be very
cult,
nice.
right? Don't use the language of the cult.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
So I just want to
Don't
say that it's that it's okay to call a man and a woman, and everyone is male or female, and that's decided at fertilization. We'll say conception if you're religious, and sexual orientation is one thing. What you like, don't like, all that stuff, but there's only two types, and it's okay. It's cool. And anybody who wants to disagree with that, I think you should apologize to your mother. We all came out of a woman. We all know what they are. So that's all I will say. And there are no trans kids, but there are trans kids. And you don't have to believe me, but these are facts. So
absolutely.
If facts are mean, then whatever.
All right.
I could be the meanest lady ever. Terrible, mean, transphobic, all that stuff doesn't mean that those aren't truthful, factual statements. So, and everything else about inclusion or tolerance should start on the basis of those indisputable, objective facts.
Yeah.
That's all I would say.
Tolerate women, include women.
Yeah.
Got on my soapbox, sorry. It's because you remind me of my son, so I'm talking to you like, let me tell you something, Eddie.
No, it's good. I appreciate you guys for having me on and for opening up a space like this with this podcast. And what I hope is that Alex and now me can maybe start a trend of other left-wing people who want to speak out on this issue, coming on this show and speaking out, because it's going to take, bravery to fight back against this institutionalized madness. And that's what you guys are doing.
And I have to say, you're our fourth unicorn, Eddie. You're our fourth unicorn, male Marxist who will publicly speak nicely, politely, but truthfully about this issue. So there's now Eddie Liger. We can add him to Alexander McKay, Nick Dury, Scotsman, lovely dude, and Garrett Ramirez. We have 4, Tanya, in our stable. No, I'm kidding.
Nice.
What about the orange hat guy?
I meant that in the best cadre. Sorry. Tanya, do you want to say something?
No. I'm done. Thank you. That was really fun. It was really fun, Eddie. Eddie,
you are my favorite AC Peter. You're now, I think, but he always has been, hasn't he?
Do that again.
Ernest Eddie.
Awesome.
Ooh, oh, well, thirst trap.
Thumbnail.
I wish I could do it too, but I can't. Nothing to show.
Eddie, thank you. Tanya, help me remember to get him that information about the sports stuff. Yeah,
I will. I've got it at the top of my head.
Yeah. Because those if those women are feeling isolated or whatnot, they can they have at least two friends, and we know our other turfs and tags, so we'll get them straight. So they want to be like, what the hell? Anyway, thank you, Eddie.
Big up Marx's turf gang. That's so cute, Jenny. Big up Marx's turf gang. I love the youth of today. So charming.
Exactly. Okay, so everybody, Eddie's at Midwestern Marx. He's also American Communist Party. He is a fierce defender of girls' sports, especially wrestling, and he's a cool dude. So check it out. And we'll see you next time, Eddie. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Eddie. Thanks, Tara.
Bye.
Bye.
No,
Thanks,
Tanya, you're
chat.
staying on for a second.
Okay.
I'm not even going to look at so people who have made comments. I can only imagine. Unfortunately, we're solo. I'm solo, and so I don't have anybody to help me with the comments. But if there's really important, if there's something you really want to say or ask, the way that I'll for sure see it is if you put it on X under the tweet for this episode.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. Tanya, that was nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. Thanks for having me. It was fun. I like talking to that.
No,
young
thank you
man.
for getting up
Eddie.
so early. We had three time zones. Yeah. So it was like,
No, it's so crazy, right? I keep thinking of him as a hockey player. I keep thinking Eddie Liger. He's a Quebec hockey player. Eddie Liger. Glad I didn't say that. Well, I might have done. I'm glad he didn't catch on in my own personal nonsense track running through my head. Eddie Liger. Yeah, he's sweet. Nice guy. And I'm glad that he's standing up for women and girls. And he's such a different, I mean, I don't know him at all, but he seems like such a different
yeah, this is our first time meeting him face to face, virtual.
Right? Like the one that's here, the one that's my daughter's, it's just such a different beast. It's such a, like, he's a nice young new world kind of thoughtful young man.
Not a taskmaster trying to mass produce wrestlers.
Yeah, it's a blood sport though.
Excuse me. Yeah. All right, my goodness. All of a sudden I just like my mental power has gone away. Such, whatever it is that I had.
I feel like we can like high five.
Yeah, hey,
like, hey, high five.
Look at us. Yeah, look at us.
Yeah. Right. All the chats disappeared. Yeah, we're not going to watch those old women high-fiving.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Oh, and I'm glad that you looked at some of the chat because I was thinking we're going to get some of those oldies but goodies. All this gender misinformation. No, it's fine.
There was only one kind of TRA person. I don't know.
That's fine. I mean, they,
either, but
yeah. We used to be more. You get to a thing where you used to be tolerant. You probably remember that phase where you would like go round and round with people and try to explain and talk. And now you get to a point where you're like, look.
Yeah, right.
These are the facts. You can either accept them or what can I do?
Right. It's 2025. I'm not doing this anymore.
No more. Yeah, we're not going back to 2020.
Yeah. But what about my daughters? No. Just out you go. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Yeah. It's like, I'm sure she'll be all right.
So charming.
Oh my
goodness.
Did you hear?
What's the
go ahead.
The guy that the Black Hawk helicopter that flew into the plane, was that a man pretending to be a woman? Do you know that? I'm going to go research that. In Washington,
was that?
Washington.
I thought it was 2 planes that hit. I thought
no,
it was 2
a Black
planes.
Hawk
It was a helicopter.
It was a Black Hawk helicopter flown apparently by a man with a lady gender, but I don't know if that's still the news because it's updating all the time. So after this, I'm gonna go because it's terrifying. I'm terrified of that stuff. Air accidents, train rage, terrified. So
yeah.
Oh, Jenny Lynn says they were white males. I don't know. Yeah. But was one of them in lipstick?
Yeah, I haven't.
Because that matters to the rage, I guess. I don't know. Because then they're gonna if it was a man, then it's gonna be like, oh, you mean TERFs, you made him do this. Like that's always the right every time.
Yeah, you can't understand the trans woman misogyny.
No, right?
And I have to tell people, I'm just like, with this, It's like, you'll be all right. It's like, I don't believe in Scientology. Scientologists still exist. You know, I
Right.
don't, you know, there's all kinds of things. So I'm not a Hindu. Lots of Hindus.
Right. They're not suffering from.
So you'll be all right. You'll be all right. And I would
I know.
hope that you would find another fixation or hobby or pet cause. Anyway. Okay, Tanya, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Enjoy
Liz.
the rest of your
Thanks for having me.
day.
I will.
And you
Have
just
a
look
good
so lovely. You have like a glow about you. So I
I
don't know
was
what
up
color's
all
going
night.
on
I
there.
didn't get to sleep. I no, it's just the black sweater. I didn't sleep. I've been up all night. I didn't take a benzo because I had to wake up. Maybe that's why. I'm not my usual puffy faced morning self, maybe. But thank you for saying that. You know, now I have to go out
No,
and
I
show
think you
people.
look, yeah.
You look
Yeah,
really good too.
well, yeah. Make lots of thank you. I have a new light now.
The
But
colors are
we'll
lovely.
yeah, make hopefully. Sorry?
The colors, the jean and your white skin and your
Oh,
you know, snow white
oh,
hair.
that's the other thing, because
These are lovely colors.
I got the ring light there because Jennifer Billick was like, you need to do something better with your picture. But it's so like, oh my God, I'm like
Amazing.
Snow White now.
Oh, really, Jennifer
Like I
Billick?
do
You don't
go outside. Like I have one of those conditions that if I go out in the sun, I'll like, you know, burst into flame or something. You
Is
know.
that right? You're so fair. I
Anyway.
just turn red like a lobster. I just have to say
Hmm.
something to Jenny Lynn before I go about benzos.
Go ahead.
And I'm saying, no, they're so bad. Don't take them. There's a sleep podcast. Jenny Lynn, there's a sleep podcast called Nothing Much Happens. It's free. And I listen to it every night. And it's, you know, it's been amazing. Nothing Much Happens. It's a free sleep podcast. It's these boring stories. And like, I've never even finished them. But it didn't work last night. Anyways, sorry about that.
She was too excited.
I was too excited to meet Eddie.
Our exclusive.
Eddie J.
Yes.
Man, I get all the guys beat up all the truths. Sorry. It's a nonsense track.
Okay. I'm going to turn this off now before we really go off the rails. Love you, and I will see you next time. Everybody, please do like, share, subscribe. And we will be back soon with another Morbid Symptoms. Later,
Bye.
Tatus. Bye.